All right, we are recording. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second episode of the Kids from It podcast. We are we're honored to have a special guest, Karla. I don't know your last name. I don't know if you want to give that or not. If you want the anonymity, that's perfectly fine. Trust me, I get it. But thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I can give you my last name. I don't mind.
Have any of us done it? Now let's not make it weird. Let's not be like,
what?
Make it weird.
These are our last names.
Well, the thing is, you could just make up a last name. Yeah, no one would know. It's like go track them down. This is like the one time in your life where you're just free to give yourself a whole new name. Hell, you can give yourself a first name. I could be Cliff Davenport the next episode. You know, if no one knows it. So
weird on you.
I'm gonna stay mysterious. I'll stay mysterious.
I like it. All right, Kayla, how are you doing today?
I'm in a great mood. Obviously, I'm pumped to be here. I'm so excited that we're finally doing episode 2. I just want to say that we should have had it out. We should have done it 2 weeks ago. That wasn't our fault, but
it's been a long time coming. The podcast kind of like organically just sprouted up in our minds, and then we're like, oh yeah, we actually have to do planning for this stuff, and so we'll see.
Yeah.
Kai, how about yourself?
I think I am. I'm gonna speak the game.
I'm doing great. I'm so excited for this. I love everything about this. I'm having a great day, actually.
I appreciate that you and I are both like that. You did a setting on your apartment too, because I felt weird last time y'all were like here, and I was like way back here. So it's like we're really I like it.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, because we're cute.
Well, all right. So today's episode, we are going to go over one of the primary, the primary institutions when it comes to independent fundamental Baptist universities.
Quintessential.
Yes, yeah, it's the one you think of when it comes to this genre of Bob Jones University, and we have 2. Former students from Bob Jones, in Kay and Karla. And Kai, you've been there for a camp or something, right? If I remember correctly.
I spent like every summer at Bob Jones.
Okay, all right.
And we used their curriculum.
Okay, cool. So before we get started, let's just go with like a general rundown of not necessarily like the rules and everything, but just like the vibe you got just from being there. If you could just, describe the aura of the place. And I'll start because I have been to Bob Jones, believe it or not. I was there for
last time, right? When we did last episode, I know that you were, did you say we were unclear about whether or not you had been there? You mentioned China. so you have.
Okay. Yes. I was there for an afternoon or 2. And I had signed up to go on a missions trip to China for several months. And we all came from all around the country, and we met is it Greenville that Bob Jones is in, South Carolina? And we had some training courses there on Chinese customs and cultures and, what to expect and, basic communication, like a few words to say to kind of get by and, just kind of prep us. And so I didn't have too much interaction with it. Like I said, I was there maybe 2 afternoons, and just because in some classroom they had there. So I remember the buildings look kind of nice, but that's all I thought. But I did not. This would have been like 2003, and I already had a very negative opinion of Bob Jones University at the time. So it had been pretty skewed either way. But we'll start with Kayla. What are your biggest memories from Bob Jones?
I don't remember a whole lot. We last episode. No, I want to just make a point of what you said. Like the campus is really big and open. If you're like driving through Greenville, you'll see it. It's very welcoming. It's beautiful. So my first impression of Bob Jones, honestly, I was like coming out of the Haven. I was like, wow, like this, I can work with this. When I actually got to Bob Jones, I was like, what the fuck? More than I was hoping for college, coming out of the Haven. And then Karla and I laugh about this often, but Karla and I definitely had different experiences. I can't wait to hear about yours because I feel like it's more on path for Bob Jones. I pretty much immediately linked up with, with another wild kid and I had a unique experience at Bob Jones. I had a great time. I was running around Greenville and just doing things I shouldn't have done. But so I'll let Karla. I want Karla to lead this one.
Oh, no.
We'll end with Karla since she's our guest. Kai, what were your experiences? The times you spent every summer there for a while.
I feel like this is not a tricky one, but I feel like I loved it. I had the best time. But also, I grew up in such a conservatively strict home that and you couldn't have friends that weren't from church, and you couldn't have friends that were if they didn't go to church, you couldn't be friends with them. And we were homeschooled, and so it was very controlling. And also where we lived in Georgia, we were only 3 hours from Bob Jones. And so getting together with other people who were raised like I was, I didn't feel like an outsider because everyone dressed the same and whatever. And it was a chance to do something different. So I remember having the best time. Some of the best memories I made were there. And then especially as a teenager, getting to go to different camps and stuff they had once we had moved to Missouri and went to Maranatha and stuff. I thought that was super fun. Because when you do the curriculum, when you get to high school, you can do basically you actually get a decent education. It's just very Christian, obviously. But if you go to so many summer camps, they count towards high school credit because it's intensive for 40 hours, whatever, sometimes 2-week camps. So it was fun to get to do criminal justice camp and mission camp and other stuff. So I really liked it, but I had nothing but great memories, but also looking back, I can see how conservative it is and how it might not be great for everyone. But I was also from the time I was I don't know, 8 to 13. So
yeah, you couldn't have known any better. Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Irene, I don't want to preach on your family, but I do just want to make a note for the listeners. I've been to a lot of houses. I've been in a lot of IFB homes. Your home was definitely the most intensely strict home I have ever. And I was gonna I think that we did references in episode 1, but that was a threat in my house. Me and Courtney were fucking around. We might be sent to your house, and we were not. So I bet Bob Jones was really, exciting. Did they advertise?
Because then you had
in the IFB schools? Do you guys remember if we I have a question about the camps because I never went to a camp. So were they was it the schools and the preachers at in school in Georgia or in Maranatha that was hey, you guys should go to camp at Bob Jones? I don't remember that ever being a thing. How did that happen?
I think my family got connected to Bob Jones because the Christian school that I love in Georgia, they were pretty closely associated with it, and then they would do fine arts competitions and stuff. So I would go to fine arts competitions at Bob Jones during the school year, and then during the summer they had family camps, and then as you got older you stayed away from your parents, so it was going to summer camp while your parents went and did stuff because they had homeschool conferences during the summer. And then they have lots of other camps. And then the summer camp that we went to, which I still love so much, was also very closely associated to Bob Jones. So,
but it wasn't so this was definitely before Maranatha and all that stuff. But TJ, I'm just wondering, do you guys have any memory of them, anybody at Maranatha, encouraging us or advertising to us to go to these programs at Maranatha specifically?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Really? Okay, I kind of thought so, but I also don't remember how or when.
Didn't Maranatha host people that would come through and would sing from the different colleges? Or am I imagining it? Because I know this church we went to that I hate more than anything else in Rolla, they used to have dozens of groups come through every year. And I thought Maranatha had the same.
I remember, I do know that Bob Jones has music, all kinds of music stuff, but I'm just trying to remember the involvement of Bob Jones at Maranatha specifically is what I was trying to ask.
Are you asking specifically about Bob Jones or just okay? Because
just Bob Jones
conservative colleges.
Maranatha. Didn't mean to be such a big question. I meant it to be a small question, but
do you guys I don't remember Bob Jones ever coming to Maranatha. I don't
either.
recall that. Christian schools came a lot, for the colleges, but Bob Jones, I don't recall. Like Pastor Carnahan was a Bob Jones grad, and so he talked about it all the time. And so, yeah,
I think
so
that's what. Wow, you're right.
yeah, so that was the
Miss
connection.
Carter go to Bob Jones too?
No idea.
Who?
His wife, Miss Carter.
I have no idea.
Oh.
Yeah, no clue.
Wow, I forgot about that.
All right, so Karla, what was your experience there? You have the most experience, so you're the seasoned veteran here when it comes to Bob Jones. Well, what can you tell us about the place?
It was beyond depressive, honestly. Like in every way, but I made the most of it. I somehow had a blast, but it's because of the people that I found. So, I mean, obviously Kayla was one of them, but I mean, before I even went there, my brother, I followed him there. He was there like the year before I went, I believe. And when I visited, he had all these cool friends, and they were people I knew beforehand. Like half of them were from Indiana, from like other high schools that I played against. So I already went into it knowing cool people, or normal people, I guess. So when I visited, I'm like, this place is awesome. Because my brother like broke rules as I visited, and I'm like, oh, it's fun. I can totally do this. And then as soon as I got there, they gave me the handbook that you have to like, I don't know if did we have to memorize it or we had to like read through the whole thing and then we had to sign it.
We had to sign it. I was gonna say, are we signing it?
We had to sign it just to be like, okay, if we break all these 1 million rules, then we're gonna get kicked out. And I was like, what have I done? But yeah, I mean, I made the most of it, and I grew up in church in like a whole old-fashioned fundamental Baptist, moving on to just like regular Baptist and then like non-denominational. So I just kind of knew how to play the game, and I knew how to lie very well. So I think that's how I got through most of that, but obviously didn't make it through because they made me withdraw. So
yeah.
What?
So they have a demerit system. Did you guys like grow up? Okay.
Yeah.
So we got demerits for the dumbest things. I got them for like the room wasn't clean enough. If there was like a speck on the floor, you would get demerits for that. I had headphones on one time in the hallway, and an RA caught me, got demerits for that. I had headphones on like off campus, got in trouble for that. My skirts were too short. I was texting during chapel, like towards the end of it.
Did we every single day too?
We had chapel every day, like 9 or 10 a.m. every day. And then we didn't even get to have a spring break. Instead, it was Bible conference, and it was 3 services a day that we had to go to instead of being able to like go home or go travel or something like that. So I don't know, when you're like in such an oppressive like atmosphere, you figure out ways to make your own fun and to make it like manageable and tolerable, if that makes sense. So I don't know. That was my experience, but the things I remember, I like fully enjoyed. Everything else, I'm like, I'll just blot that out. It's okay.
It's kind of like being in the military. Like it sucks. It's terrible. But the friends that you made during that awful time are some of the closest people that you'll ever meet in your life.
Exactly.
And I want to point out a few things you mentioned for anyone who didn't go through a Bible college experience and were probably a little confused about what she talked about. The first thing was the chapel and clean room. So yes, like what they said was correct. At Maranatha Baptist Bible College, we would have chapel every single day. It was around 9:30, and you had to go, and you got in trouble if you missed it. And we also had I can't remember. One of the chapels was the chapel where you turned in your church attendance. So we had these little cards we filled out, and you had to fill out. There was a pre-approved list of churches that the school said were acceptable for you to go to. And if you went to a different church, you had to, write it down and submit it for review so they can make sure that it's a good Bible believing Christian church. And you had to mark off attended church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, or write an excuse why you weren't there. You had to turn those in every time. And during chapel is when they would check your rooms, at least for us. Like that's when they would go. They would send the RAs or the well, we call them PCs, prayer captains, or the room leaders, and they would go in and check the rooms on the floor. And if your room wasn't up to standard, you got demerits for it. Or if it was clean, you were fine. Or if you were buddies with the RA, you were fine. That's kind of how that worked. And the headphones thing was probably a head scratcher too. Now, I'm just going to assume this is the case because this was for us, that music also had to be pre-approved. You couldn't just listen to whatever the hell you wanted to. If you listen to one of those 2/4 beats, that syncopation or whatever, they had you sneaking in some Buddy Holly or Fats Domino or whatever, and you were listening to that stuff, then you would get demerits of that. And so people would hide the music to listen to with headphones. I know you can't have headphones because we can't monitor the music that you're listening to. And so that's what she's referencing to. But good times right there. All right. 9/11 happened during chapel, or like right before chapel. I remember when I was in college. I remember my buddy of mine was setting up the chairs for chapel, and he mentioned that, hey, a plane flew into the World Trade Center. I was like, what? And then he said, yeah, and also one flew in the Pentagon. So get the fuck out of here. I thought he was joking, but so
I bet you said that right there in the sanctuary. You were like, get the fuck out of here. That didn't happen.
Yeah, come on. Yeah, I didn't believe it was real. Yeah, and so chapel is always tied to, like, college chapel is always tied to 9/11 for me because that's what I heard about.
TJ, that's a little rough.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot rougher for a lot of other people, so I can't really complain too much about it. I was, yeah. So.
Did you guys have to badge into chapel? Like when I went to Clearwater, every day you had to scan into chapel. We had to like swipe our student IDs.
No,
every day so they counted chapel attendance. Like they would be able to pull in the system if you were not in chapel.
So we had row monitors.
I was not.
Yeah, we had row monitors instead. So we had someone at the end of every row, and they not only checked your attendance, but they would also watch to see if you were paying attention or not.
Wow.
And you would get demerits based on that. And they were sneaky about it. Like they wouldn't confront you and be like, hey, I noticed you fell asleep in chapel, or I noticed you weren't paying attention, or like noticed you were on your phone or you weren't there. They would just, the demerits would show up on your record or whatever, just right away.
Wow. That we did not have that. I mean, I guess if someone saw it, they would, but we didn't. We may have had monitors. We didn't have them for rows. That's it. That's insanity. Yeah. I'm trying to remember how they did attendance for chapel for us, because I feel like they had something like that, but this is in the days before you could swipe cards, so don't make fun of me. But so it had to have been, it would have been someone with a piece of paper would have been checking it off, someone with a clay tablet and cuneiform or whatever. I don't know how they would have done it, but they did check your attendance though. They did, but I just, it's been so long that I can't remember how. But so this episode we're going to be focusing on Bob Jones, and I'm glad to see that everyone here seems to have negative opinions of the place, because I am going to go to fucking town on this school. I can't wait on this shit. And so all right, what I wanted to do, right?
That's a little exciting. Like, what?
I know. I'm a little flustered right now.
So we're gonna start off with that. And then we'll shift focus to Karla and her experience, since or you can just interject if you want to interject anything I bring up here to see if this coincides or just kind of comports and makes sense with what you witnessed during your experience there. Let me know. Now, the first time that most people outside of our circles heard about Bob Jones would have been back in 2000, when George W. Bush went to Bob Jones on his campaign to be president. And it hit national news that George Bush went to this weird Christian school. And they said, hey, we went and looked this school up, and it is the year of our Lord 2000, and they still have an interracial dating ban. Like, this is like the only school in the country that has this. What's up with that? And I remember it was like national news. It was all over the place. People were talking about it. And Bob Jones kind of was bullied into slightly altering their interracial marriage ban. They didn't get rid of it. They slightly altered it, because what they said, I remember Bob Jones III was on Larry King, 2000, 2001. And he said, say what?
I remember that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and he said that. So we are going to be gracious and magnanimous enough to allow students of different races to date, but only if we get signed permission from both sets of parents. Like, look how progressive we are. Look how great that is. And so I just remember seeing that's like, all right, what's going on here? And so I want to focus on the just the breathtakingly racist construction of Bob Jones University from the beginning. So the first thing I'm going to do is reference a statement Bob Jones released in 2008 about this. And so I'm going to share the screen here for you folks. Let's go here. All right. Can you guys see that, or is it too small? Do I gotta zoom in?
I can see it.
All right, cool. So this is about halfway through the statement that they have. And I'll read it here. It's like Bob Jones University's history. Bob Jones University has existed since 1927 as a private Christian institution of higher learning for the purpose of helping young men and women cultivate a biblical worldview, represent Christ and his gospel to others, and glorify God in every dimension in life. Bob Jones University's history has been chiefly characterized by striving to achieve these goals, but like any other human institution, we have failures as well. For almost 2 centuries, American Christianity, including Bob Jones University, in its early stages was characterized by the segregationist ethos of American culture. Consequently, for far too long, we allowed institutional policies regarding race to be shaped more directly by that ethos than by the principles and precepts of Scripture. We conform to the culture rather than providing a clear Christian counterpoint to it. In so doing, we failed to accurately represent the Lord and to fulfill the commandment to love others as ourselves. For these failures, we are profoundly sorry. Though no known antagonism towards minorities or expressions of racism on a personal level have ever been tolerated on our campus, we allowed institutional policies to remain in place that were racially hurtful. Now, I want to focus on that paragraph right there, because it's one thing we may revisit that later. I know, we'll see. But it's one thing to issue an apology, but it's quite another to issue an apology in the evasive and euphemistic manner in which they did just there. Like it is insulting. They actually say listen, no personal attacks on racism have ever been tolerated. We didn't tolerate individual hatred towards people. And also
problem.
Yeah. And what I love is because this plays into this trope of now, as a minority in this movement, you saw this a lot. It was people equated racism with being mean. That's what it meant. Like say, hey, listen, I don't hate black people. I don't hate you. In fact, if you look at old writings from slave owners in the 1700s and 1800s, you would be hard pressed to find any of them that say, I hate black people. They never say that. They all say, I actually love black people. I want what's best for them. What's best for them is working for me for free. That's what it comes down to. And so it was the same thing where they and you still see it a lot in American culture today. It's like, well, I don't hate that group. I'm just kind of concerned about this stuff. Like, people aren't really happy or comfortable admitting blatant hatred because they know how bigoted it sounds. But my favorite part is when it says, like many other institutions, we segregated by race, because they're saying, yeah, sure, it was bad, but folks, other people did it too. I mean, sure.
Way that they structured that sentence, TJ. I'm glad that you called that out as the point, because that was the one thing that was sticking out in my head. It was like we're about to say sorry. All of Christianity did it first, then Bob Jones. We're just in it. Like, that was the entire sentence structure was fucked. Yeah, sorry.
It was where was it? Right here. Oh yeah. We were wrong in not admitting African Americans before 1971, which sadly was a common practice of both public and private universities in the year prior to that time. On the same program, he announced lifting. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, everyone else did it. By the way, everyone else stopped doing it like 8 years before this. Bob Jones was the Johnny come lately when it came to this shit, because Brown versus Board of Education was 1954. That is when the Supreme Court said, hey, you can't have segregated schools anymore, but that only applied to public schools. And incidentally, there is, if you can look at a chart of this, there is a suspicious rise of independent fundamental Baptist high schools and colleges after Brown versus Board of Education. Like, that was the actual driving impetus of this whole movement, and you can kind of see why that's the case. But I really love that that example, Kayla, because like, imagine that flying any other time. Like, imagine like your husband cheats on you, and he's like, listen, I'm sorry I cheated on you, but I
cheated. My bad.
Yeah, like many other men, I failed to hold up to the standards of monogamy, and so I'm sorry, but just like everybody else, I was like, yeah, that's not an apology. It's not a fucking apology. So that really bothered me. So what are you guys' thoughts on this? There's
another thing that really bothers me in this too, and it kind of ties into some of our experiences together when we were trying to record episode 2 last time with our some of the other people that I've talked to. One thing that I kept getting from one person in particular, honestly, was that like we needed to talk about some of these like more extreme tragic things that happen in other regular settings, like other public colleges or whatever, however Bob Jones said it in that statement. And I kept having this argument with this person in my head, and then I'll say it here, but that's true. Like, there's bad shit that happens everywhere. Cool. I think the reason that we want to talk about this is because like this is bad shit happening under this like guise, under this like, we're cool, we're Christians, we're just regular Baptists, we're sliding in here. It's all like they hiding in plain sight, and it's layer after layer after layer of hiding. Like, I just that was bullshit. That entire thing that we just read. It's not about like whether or not it's happening other places. Like, everybody knows that bad shit happens everywhere. Of course we can go to a public college and we can find, the bad things happening. Like, we're humans. This is a world that's going to happen everywhere. But the problem with Bob Jones is that with all these institutions is that they're just excuses. We're not accountable. Same thing when it comes to how they're paying, the benefits that they're getting from the state and federation for Christian. Like, y'all get to stay, segregating people. What? It just doesn't jive right with me. I just went on a whole little shit spiral again, but I hate it.
I feel like within the IFB though, as a whole, whether it's like with your parents or in churches or in schools, there's a lack of accountability. Like, yes, you could be in the wrong, and like, it's okay to say that you're doing the best that you can with what you know how to do, but that doesn't mean that you didn't hurt people. But there's like they throw it back on God. Well, we were doing what God was leading us to do. Well, we were doing and it's like,
you said exactly what I was going to say.
Just say that you're wrong. And because like nowhere in the Bible does it say like don't ask for, like, if you're like, they like love the Bible so much, right? Like, and I'm still a Christian, right? So I do too. But like nowhere in the Bible can I find where not forgiving people and holding people accountable was okay. Like, Jesus held people accountable. So like, why can you not just take the accountability for the fact that you were wrong? Like, that would go so much farther than you like pulling other people into it. Like,
well, I think that's exactly what they
talk about how you fucked up and say sorry and mean it. Like, and do better.
Young people accountable, but there is a lack of accountability
with the adults.
With 100% elder and to be quite frank, the white adults. I mean, I don't know. A lot of times, at least in my experiences, I'll say it about just the churches I was at, but they do hold people. There's an extreme level of accountability on children, on young adults, on the teenagers. There is
and
no
girls
accountability for the institution or the people that created it or established it at all.
Carla, what did you pick up from that?
I think it all boils down to, it's just like a whole I'm sorry but situation, and like it was mentioned before, there's no accountability with that. If anything, they gaslight you. They're never gonna admit that, maybe the rules are a bit strict, or maybe they came down a little bit too hard on you. It's always because you're younger than I am, you're wrong. and I'm right just because I'm older. Not even because like I've been a Christian longer than you. Like an old white man could have just gotten saved, right? And then if they fuck up, like you're still somehow in the wrong because they're just older and they're wiser.
You weren't respecting your elders.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't win as a kid because
Nope.
we're adults in college, but we're treated like children. We have a bedtime. We have a curfew. It's just crazy. And we are forced to go to all these services and forced to abide by this dress code. And it's like, for what? Like our futures are going to be ruined because our skirt's a little bit too short.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Men will sin because they saw your ankles.
Exactly.
It's funny you guys said that because my answer to like, what are they worried about? What are they worried we're gonna start fucking? That's what they're worried about. Like that for some strange reason, they have this obsession with their children's genitals, and which you still see a lot going on today, and it's bizarre. But like, yeah, it's weird.
Dude, because you said that reminds me of something that happened. I was at a basketball game, and my guy friend was sitting next to one of my girlfriends, and what did they I think they high-fived, and an RA came up to them and said, whoa, whoa, whoa.
No.
From across the gym, came up to them and said, you guys didn't have to do that. You high-fived for a little bit too long. Your hands were touching for too long. Just fist bump. All you have to do is fist bump next time, okay, guys? I'm like, what?
What if they hold the fist bump for too long? I mean,
that's what I'm saying. Like, you guys really think this girl's gonna get pregnant because she high-fived a man for too long? That's crazy.
Insanity.
Stranger things have happened. I don't want to talk about Mary, but
well, hey, yeah, you're right. I mean, Mary got pregnant with no contact at all. So what are we doing here? So,
okay.
Yeah, it's there's precedent, but
heartbeat of the girl. Never know.
I wanted to address something that I think all three of you mentioned of the dictatorial nature of these institutions. And one thing that's always been interesting to me about this is we spend a lot of time on the hermeneutics and the study of the Bible and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But when it comes down to like what you're supposed to do, it's not really about morality. It's about obedience to authority. That's what it's actually about. Because if you start questioning any like the logic of any of this, that's a sin too. Now you're rebelling because like what's important is you shut the fuck up, you know your place, and you do what we tell you. Like that's what really matters because a lot of the stuff, like Kai, you mentioned that like it's not in the Bible at all. Like you're just show me the verse in the Bible that says you can't go to a movie theater. Like you just made that up. And but the important thing is you listen to your elders, whether they're right or wrong. You grant them that respect, and you wait your turn. 40 years from now, you can make the rules, and that's all it comes down to.
Well, and I think you're right because I distinctly remember growing up, and I'd be like, I would just want to go to the movie theater, and my dad would be like, no, and I was like, why? And he was like, why are you asking me why? I told you something. Well, it was more my mom that talked to me that way. And she would be like, you're not supposed to question me. You just say, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, no, ma'am, no, sir. Yeah. And I was like, okay, but why? They don't ever want to explain the why or the logic behind what they're saying. And it's like, cool. So why can't I? Like, it doesn't say in the Bible, you can't listen to a certain kind of music. It doesn't say in the Bible that you can't do X, Y, and Z. And like the way that I think that these churches and stuff find ways around justifying what they say is wild.
I really struggle with this as a parent. I obviously have a totally different parenting style than my parents ever did. And plus there's, a different situation here, but I tend to, when I get like overstimulated with my kids or like a lot's going on, I revert right back to that. And in a way that I don't love, like I have to go back and apologize to my kids and I almost explain things to a level now with my children that as I've almost gone too far. Like I have kids now that are way too young to expect me to explain in detail every reason why I do everything.
Yeah.
But no, when I look back on my parenting that I over explain, we honestly like over validate feelings because I don't know. I've never seen it I don't know how. I don't know what that looks like to just be normal about. You have to listen to me, but I explain things to you. So I'm glad that you guys brought that up because it's hard.
It's true. It's true. It's difficult. I mean, but that's what makes morality such an important thing, because if we just dismiss the concept of asking why and trying to decipher the reasons that, like, because, like, yeah, some rules make sense. Like, we need rules for societies to survive. Like, um, governments are inevitably corrupt, but men must be governed nonetheless. I mean, we can't live like animals, but we just need to have a decent explanation for why we have these rules. And I think Karla, you mentioned that this is an "I'm sorry but" explanation. It's right up there with "I'm sorry if." Those are the two that I'm sorry's that I cannot. It's like, why bother apologizing if you're just going to, make a bunch of exceptions for it? Oh, I'm sorry if what I said. No, fuck you. Are you sorry or not? Like, whether it hurt me or not, that kind of bothers me. And I can't remember who said this, but one of you mentioned about how. Oh, Kayla, you talked about how, of course there are problems in college universities as well. Well, you know what problem you wouldn't have found in a college university in 1971? Segregation. That wouldn't have been there. So kind of a deflection of like a casuistry of the lowest possible order. And one thing that I like to point to a lot is with this will lead into what I wanted to share here. But it's about how the independent fundamental Baptist movement, of which we're familiar, is how they hold themselves. I think, Kayla, you're talking about how you're speaking for God. Like, you're supposed to be the moral paragon of society. Like, God has entrusted you with his words and his will to be the shining city on the hill, to lead all of us out of darkness. If that's the case, why is it that you guys are consistently the last people to figure out like the most obvious moral answers? You were wrong for decades on civil rights, wrong for decades on women's rights, wrong for decades on trans and gay rights, like everything.
TJ, holy cow, yes. And I'm
go ahead.
No, I was just about to go off. I'm sorry is an action word. I tell my kids this. So, Bob Jones, what the fuck have you done for the Black community since you segregated?
Right. It's nothing. Yeah. It's. So I'm glad I was bringing that up too. I had that written down. That's good because it's true. It's like, because you're like, oh, okay, sorry about that. Let's just pretend it never happened, which sounds kind of familiar. I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of that shit going on, and there's a say what.
This the white people shit. I'm sorry.
And so there's do you guys remember this example? They would give this example all the time in church. And even as like a teenager, I found this very funny that they didn't see the point. They would do this example right here. They'd say, so, the problem with the church is that the church becomes like more backslidden secular every year. So right now the church is here and the world is here. But 10 years from now, the world will be here and the church will be here where the world used to be. Do you guys remember seeing that example in church? I saw it all the time. And I was like, yeah, I wonder why that is. I wonder why that's the case. Maybe it's because like the positions you guys held were just cultural positions and not actual moral positions. You just you stay about 30 or 40 years behind the culture. You fight, you complain, you bitch, you moan and bitch some more and say, oh, it's too bad society is progressing. And then 10 years later, you're exactly where they are. And it's like, okay, why are you keeping this up? This is a charade. So if you guys want to add on that, let me know, because
that's how Bob Jones is right now. Like, now you can have headphones on wherever on campus. Girls can wear jeans.
That I was about to say that. That's it eats me up.
It's so much easier to go off campus with the opposite sex. Like, there's just so much more you can do now that back when we went, like, you would get campused or even kicked out for any of that stuff.
Did get kicked out.
I haven't even heard that term, getting campused, in so long. Like, so many like memories just came flashing back, and I was like, "Oh, I'm glad you said that." I just remember lots of things.
It just really makes you wonder that if you actually believe in moral objectivity, let's say you do, or not everyone does, but let's say you do believe in moral objectivity, and that some actions are wrong no matter what, and All right, so why was this wrong 10 years ago, but it's fine now? Like, explain that to me. Like, if you built decades of your institution upon these precepts, I'm gonna need you to sit down and fucking tell me why is it that you just abandoned this? I know the real reason you did, because your institution. Yeah, your institution would fall apart. Like, it'd be untenable to hold these rules in 2024 when you could get away with it in 2003, which doesn't give me a lot of confidence in your ability to decipher what is and isn't morally correct.
There's
And
no other than to be like, yeah, it's blind leading the blind. It's like we're just following the old guy before us, and this works for us, and we're hypocrites. There's no other way to explain
there isn't.
it
Yeah.
logically.
Well, I think, I don't know if you guys how much you guys still follow Bob Jones, but the president of the school that I went to in Florida, that, I mean, I love, but he went and took a job at Bob Jones, and Bob Jones just had like an inward like falling out in the last couple of years within like the executive leadership. And people were like, we need to, like, there are some good people that work there that were like, we need to modernize, like, this, we have to change, like, none of what you're saying, like, listen, hold on, BJ. None of what you're saying can be found in the Bible. Like, this is wrong, whatever. And like BJU was slowly starting to like modernize and stuff. And then there was like a whole inward thing that caused people to leave, because they were like, we can't even make this look like what Christianity should look like, because you guys want it to be stuck in the ways like so hard. And because this person, I guess people were like, oh, it's becoming too liberal. And people were like, nope, we're just trying to treat people like adults and like humans and like back up the rules with what is actually in the Bible. And so I don't know. I think it's interesting that just when they were like making progress to an extent, like not even talking about like racial disparity or anything like that, just like with the rules of being able to wear jeans and go off campus and that kind of stuff, that people were like, oh no, too liberal. Can't let these kids go off campus by themselves. Shut it all down. Yeah. So it's still just like the inward fighting when they try to change. It's like just the old establishment is like, no, let's keep it the way it's always been.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry, that was a weird sidebar, but
no, it's with that stuff. Oh, wait, Kayla.
I was just saying, I have no idea. I did not hear about this, so I've not kept up with Bob Jones. So I'm gonna immediately Google what they don't want to change. Like, Bob Jones is like, I mean, you go into it, you walk, you get through those gates, and it's like you enter. It's like you see it, it's pretty, it looks normal from the outside, and it's like you enter the bubble. So I really don't think that they do want to change, Guy. I mean, like, you're right. That's it.
Like a whole thing. I'm gonna text the link to you guys so you can.
Yeah, it's they don't want to change. They have to. They're being forced. Their arms are being twisted.
I think that there's good people who wanted to change, and like the institutionalized establishment of like the good old boys are like absolutely not. And so like they drive out anyone that wants to change or does want to do better or does believe differently.
Do you guys know the name Steve Pettit?
Oh, I remember Steve Pettit. Yeah.
She knows what I'm talking about.
As soon as you said that, I was like, oh, I heard about this. So he's the current president right now, and he's the one who's made all.
Wait, Steve Pettit is president of Bob Jones?
No, he's gone.
He's gone now? They got rid of him?
Did you not hear about this?
No, because that's what I was going to talk about. He wanted to make more changes, and Triple Sticks or Bob Jones III was like, absolutely not. Like, came out of retirement.
Thing, and he said, if you're going to basically like, if you're going to try to like tie my hands and not allow me to lead the school in the way in which you've entrusted me to do so, he was like, I can't in good conscience be a part of an organization that isn't willing to change. And he left. I think he left.
Because the whole board, and all of the Bob Joneses or whatever, they basically bullied him out.
But there was like a good number of people that agreed with him. Like people on faculty were like, no, he's doing the right things. Like he's making the right changes. Like he's trying. And like half of the other people were like, not get fucked. Like, wow, I'm not doing that.
Really out of the loop. I'm about to have to.
Yeah, he announced his resignation like a year ago as of March.
Wow. Okay,
and I think he's gone. Like there was like you'll have to go down the rabbit hole, but there was like a leaked letter that came out of the board. Like it got leaked to the media, and it became a whole thing. And then he had to make a statement. But I don't think he's the. I'm gonna look. I don't think he's the current president though, because I think he got like forced out.
Yeah. It sucks because like the faculty that we actually trusted and that were cool and like wanted to make an impact on all of the students, I could tell they had to tiptoe and walk on eggshells, because if they
Yeah.
spoke out of line or like tried to implement a cool rule, and like help empower you, the school would find out somehow, or some Boge, we call them Boge, but it's like students who snitch. If they found out, they would tell like the dean of students or dean of women or something like that, and then that faculty member would get in trouble. So it's like people who actually want to help and make a difference have to be quiet. Like they have to shut their mouths, or they're going to lose their job. Yeah.
Remember in
And they
Harry
could, like,
Potter
make it
when
from, like,
Draco
the background.
becomes? Oh, sorry. I have a delay.
Oh no, you're okay. There's a delay. We talked at the same time. You're good. What's up?
I was just saying it's like Harry Potter when all those like the worst kids became what were they? I'm a bad Potter nerd right now. What were they called? Umbridge is like not Dumbledore. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Draco was up in that and like everyone was on everybody. It's just like that. It's like Hogwarts, but no magic. It sucked.
And I think that's sad,
No
though, 'cause
magic.
they're like the cool faculty, like they care about people and they wanted to make a difference in their lives and like not be the same old. And like the fact that there was such a lack of like, because you can disagree with someone and you can think that they're not doing something correctly and still hold space for them and value them and let them do their own thing. Like, but not in these circles.
Nope.
Yeah, no.
Listen, you either believe one thing or you're going straight to hell.
Mm-hmm.
There's no in
That's
between.
exactly how they are. That's literally like the core thing. I think TJ, you did a great job explaining IFB on our episode 1. Like your definition and everything, the way you explained it was perfect. But when my brain goes IFB, like that's the core. But
I don't know what I said.
I have a quick. I do have a quick question before you move on, TJ. It's just like a little one, but you spit some facts last episode about like some things I didn't know about, like what did you say? Martin Luther King Jr. applied to go to Bob Jones University, all this stuff, but it just got me thinking about how very hard. I just wanted to take a moment to talk about the curriculum at Bob Jones, and I do want to give us some credit, and even the kids that are still there. All of these rules, all of that stuff in place, and it is an intense school. It is it's a hard school. It was hard. I just wanted to say that, and I just wanted to see if Karla, like you felt like our classes and stuff were pretty intense and all that.
It was extremely hard. Like as strict as Bob Jones is, it is actually one of the best schools for business, for medicine, and especially for music. They had a really, really good, like they were known for their liberal arts program, and I was a part of the music program. The hardest classes, great classes. My voice teacher, he used to sing for the Met Opera. So like all the voice teachers, they're like overqualified. The teachers are super smart. It's just like they just oppress you so much. So it's hard to remember that we had like really good classes, and there were so many Bible classes on top of it. So it's like we couldn't even relish in the fact that we were learning so many great things, because it was just Bible verses, Bible verses, Bible verses, Bible history, like learning how to be a good Christian woman. And it was just, I don't know. Yeah. It's crazy, but yeah, you're
right. It is kind of hard to remember through. Like that was one that obviously we're on episode 2, like this is one of the last thoughts I had was like, oh yeah, I had to have a 4.0 or whatever. I came out of high school like swinging. I was ready. That was all I had coming out of the Haven, was like to read and like, just lose myself in books and education. And I remember getting to Bob Jones and being like, what the fuck? I was not ready. But
yeah, they're very, because I think, oh, sorry, TJ, were you going to say something?
Well, I was going to say the only 2 things I wanted to add here is first, I appreciate Kayla flexing on us with her 4.0 in high school. Yeah, thank you.
I was doing the paces. It was not hard.
You did paces?
I was in the 4.0 myself. Like
you're talking to Mr. 2.87 over here. So yeah, sorry. Like I wasn't. But also, I want to acknowledge something Karla said like 10 minutes ago, referring to Bob Jones III as triple sticks. That's great. That's great. I'm gonna everybody. You don't run across too many thirds, but from now on, the rest of my life, I'm using triple sticks. I am officially stealing that. That is hilarious. I love it. That's all I
I
wanted
think-
to add.
Oh, he's the one.
I think it's funny that Kayla said the paces, and then she got to Bob Jones, and she was like, "What?" Because I feel like a lot of times, I'm probably going to love flag for this. I feel like in the independent fundamental Baptist world of churches, you have like your curriculums are so bad, and they don't prepare you for like actual whatever. And that's one thing I will say. Like I think I mainly used Bob Jones my entire career, like in school, like elementary school and high school and middle school. Because I think didn't we use Bob Jones, like a mix of Bob Jones and Abeka at Maranatha? I think
When I was
Becca was pretty big.
Yeah,
But
I think we
Abeka was
started in
trash.
elementary school, and then we got up to
And
the
then like
Bob
a little
Jones.
bit of ACE. I don't know if you guys heard of that brand.
Ugh, ACE and
That's
Pace.
what I did in California.
That's what Kayla had. She said she did the paces, right?
Yeah,
ACE?
the whole teach teach yourself.
That's what I
Yeah,
did.
Well,
it's
like we
wild.
trusted
And
little
so,
kids
like,
to do
I
that.
got
That's
my
crazy.
4.0, man. Yeah, be
I
impressed
will-
with my 4.0 now that you know.
Yeah, it's easy and it's dumb. And like the church that we went to in Rolla, their Christian school, used paces. And I remember talking to kids that were supposed to be in my grade, and I was like, "That's your school?" Because like even though like I was homeschooled, but Bob Jones has like a video school program, and basically like they're legit qualified teachers teaching you, and then your parents facilitate the tests and stuff like that. My classes were hard. Like I took like, I mean, there's obviously Christian themes throughout it because it's a Christian like a curriculum, but
Yeah.
like I had to actually do like dissections for science. Like I had to write papers. Like I had to put in a lot of work. And then like Bob Jones, you actually get a decent diploma when you come out, but most universities accept, even secular ones, because you have to take chemistry 1 and 2 or biology. Like you have to take these and you have to do the labs to go with them. And then you have to do like algebra and calculus and geometry. And then you have to take like history and literature. And you're right, Bob Jones has an excellent fine arts program still. Like even their art collection is very impressive.
Oh
like
my
all
goodness.
the stuff that they have.
Millions of dollars in their art collection.
Very
So, like,
much.
I don't know how they even copped any of those pieces, but
I don't know,
that
but,
was
like,
insane.
TJ's like
Education options for like I think when you look at the education options for the IFB, I will say I'm very grateful that I had Bob Jones because I was actually educated. Like
honestly saying I wouldn't
like,
have. Yeah, that's a really good
like,
point.
I think Abeka was trash.
Abeka was trash.
And paces and ACE.
Abeka was
ACE
trash.
was
ACE
such trash.
Like mold sucking on the Abeka trash bin, and then there's the bin is bad.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, what I wanted to do real quick, if I could, if you will permit me, I would like to talk about. If I would like to, there are no stars here. This is all. It's like
okay, we know there's no stars, but we really love TJ because he keeps us focused.
Well,
shameless plug for TJ.
So generally, I felt like doing it that time, but it was great. I thought that banter was great with everything, with the curriculum and stuff. I had stuff to add too. Was like, I'll get to it later. I talk enough, but and I wanted time to get to this. So what I find particularly upsetting is the passive nature in which institutions like such as Bob Jones, like Kayla, you mentioned that, oh, hey, we fucked up here. Let's just move on like nothing ever happened. That there are no, systemic issues that result from this, and never take a deeper look into it. And they act like it was just an accident. Like, oh my God, we didn't let black people attend until 1971. We didn't even notice. And it's like, no
idea.
Right? Yeah. And it's like, no, that's not what happened. Like this was purposeful. And it was explicitly stated by, the founder of your university. We're going to go over a bunch of his quotes pretty soon. And that's the part that gets me pretty upset. So I'm going to share a little PowerPoint I had put together. It's not a nice PowerPoint. Literally, there's images I threw on PowerPoint. I like so.
We love a good PowerPoint. I'm taking notes.
No, so it's not a good one. It's not a good one. But I will say this as a side note: Kay and Kayla. It says Kay. I was like, so Kay and Kai. Kay and Kai. It sounds like a Saturday morning radio show or something, but a Kay and Kai show. But
it'd be a fun time. And Karla, we have lots of Ks going on.
We got
today.
a 3 Ks here. That fits right along.
Never mind. I was gonna say something that I can't say. It's fine.
I already know.
Oh shit! What was I gonna say? I can't remember now. It's gone. Whatever. But
I like
I remember. So I remember now. So I don't know how familiar you are, Karla, with our grand and glorious United States military. But if you have ever sat through any government or military PowerPoint presentation, it is a fucking like circus. Like if they have the worst PowerPoints I have ever seen, for some reason come from the Pentagon. It's just like 90 colors and arrows. It's the most confusing thing you will ever witness in your life. And it's like,
can confirm.
Right? It's awful.
I sit in briefings every week.
It's just
confirm.
I missed the last Pentagon PowerPoint, guys. I'm really sorry, but I do
You're missing out for certain.
They are
the highlight
terrible.
of my week.
This is, I guess it's inside baseball, but I don't know why they're so bad, because they don't have to be. There are decent, graphic design artists that work in the Army, or people who know. But my guess is that they want to make really, but I think they go the wrong way, because I think they're like, okay, this PowerPoint has 80 slides. That's way too many slides. Make it 40 slides. And then you double up. That's my only guess. That doesn't make sense. But anyway, so this PowerPoint is not like that. It's literally just images I threw up. There's nothing fancy about it. But I think it's going to be pretty enlightening for our
We're here for it, TJ.
Yeah.
You're
so
better than the last Pentagon one I got. That's all I have to say.
I'll tell you a story once, some other time, about how people from my unit thought that I was a spy from the Pentagon for a long time because of some orders I had. I'll tell that story.
I wasn't. I hope you wrote that till it could be wrote no more.
Well, I wasn't a spy, but that's exactly what a spy would say. But we'll get around to it. But so we're gonna go over the this individual right here, Mr. Bob Jones Sr. himself. So this is an obituary from the New York Times when Bob Jones assumed room temperature and he was no longer living. And this is just talking about his career as a fundamentalist leader. He started college in 1927. It's almost 100 years old, and it talks. There's a section in here. Oh, segregation is in force. That was in his obituary, which I really like. It's like,
are you kidding? It said that, dude.
Nothing like that's how it's going to convince people adding it to your obituary.
There would be no need. So to be fair, this was like the obituary that was printed for him in the New York Times, and it actually goes kind of soft on him, and I will mention that in a little bit. Whereas there would be no Negroes because Dr. Jones believed that separation of the races was ordained by the Bible. Drinking was forbidden, mixed groups were limited, so on and so forth. And they talk about his political career. A professional would have actually marked it so I can find it. But I don't see it. Someone who actually knew what they were doing.
You're doing great. We believe in you.
Thank you, Guy. I appreciate it so much. But there's a section in here where it talks about he was campaigning against a man named, I think his name was Alan. Oh, here we go. He attacked Catholicism, told his audiences that Catholics regarded children, non-Catholics, as illegitimate. And he was a vehement prohibitionist. A favorite sentence of his anti-Smith speech. He was talking about a guy, and I think it was Alan Smith, who was running for president. And he was against him. And he said a favorite sentence of in his anti-Smith speeches was, "I'd rather see a saloon on every corner than a Catholic in the White House." So, obviously he hates booze. And so now notice what I want you to notice. Actually, I don't know if you guys can see my arrow here, but there's 3 ellipses after this. The quote doesn't end there. They don't include it in the obituary, but lucky for you all, I have the rest of the quote, which you can find in other newspapers. And hey, listen, get ready.
Okay.
I'd rather see a saloon on every corner than a Catholic in the White House. He'd rather see an N-word, the president, than Mr. Smith. So that's Bob Jones right there. It Yeah, so like he's not hiding this shit. Like this is right out in the open. So I want to point this out, and folks, believe me, I have more. This wasn't just a casual, oh yeah, I kind of just would rather not. No, this was a staunch, like actual firm belief he had that continued on to his entire life. And it was so much that so the civil rights movement started in the late 50s, early 60s. And you'll never believe this, but Bob Jones was not a big fan of the civil rights movement. He wasn't happy about it at all.
Sure.
And
Oh,
I know, right? I'm glad you were all sitting down for this news because it could have been a but in I think it was 1964 on Easter Sunday, he released a radio sermon called "Is Segregation Spiritual?" You'll never guess what his answer was. You'll never guess what his solution, what he thought if segregation was scriptural or not. But here are a few excerpts from his sermon. In recent years, I sound like a 13-year-old boy there. In recent years, there's been a subtle satanic effort to undermine people's faith in the Bible. And the devil has led the race along until men have put their own opinion above the word of God. You will find that practically all the troubles we are having today come out of the fact that men in many instances have caused to believe in an authoritative Bible. When you run into conflict with God's established order racially, you have trouble. You do not produce harmony. You produce destruction and trouble. And this nation is in the greatest danger it has ever been in its history. We are facing dangers from abroad and dangers at home. And the reason is that we have gotten away from the Bible of our forefathers. Do not let these religious liberals blowing their bubbles of nothing over your head get you upset and disturbed. Let's get back to the word of God and be sensible. You talk about a superior and an inferior race and all that kind of situation. Wait a minute. No race is inferior in the will of God. Get that clear. If a race is in the will of God, it is not inferior. It is a superior race. You cannot be superior to another race if your race is in the will of God and the other race is in the will of God. But the purposes of these races were established by Almighty God. And when man attempts to run contrary to the directive will of God for this world, there is always trouble. Individually, we are one in Christ, but God has also fixed the boundaries of nations, and these lines cannot be rubbed out without having trouble. The darkest day the world has ever known will be when we have one world, like they are trying what they're talking about now. The line will be rubbed out, and the Antichrist will take over and sit down on the throne and rule the world for a little while, and there will be judgment and cataclysmic curses found in the book of Revelation. There is an effort today to disturb the established order of segregation. Wait a minute. Listen, I'm talking straight to you. White folks and colored folks, you listen to me. You cannot run over God's plan and God's established order without having trouble. God never meant to have one race. It was not his purpose at all. God has a purpose for each race. I want you to listen, folks. You white and colored folks, do not let these satanic propagandists fool you. This agitation is not of God, is of the devil. Do not let people slander Almighty God. Wherever we have the races mixed in large numbers, we have trouble. They have trouble in New York. They have trouble in San Francisco. They have trouble all over California. Once again, this sounds pretty familiar. Let me tell you something. When it comes to the quality of races, all these races have quality. They all have good qualities and bad qualities. If we would just listen to the word of God and not try to overthrow God's established order, we would not have any trouble. God never meant for America to be a melting pot, to rub out the line between nations. That was not God's purpose for this nation. When someone goes to overthrowing his established order and goes around preaching pious sermons about it, that makes me sick. For a man to stand up and preach pious sermons in this country and talk about rubbing out the line between the races, I say it makes me sick. I have had the sweetest fellowship with colored Christians, with yellow Christians, red Christians, all sorts of Christians. The sweetest fellowship anyone has ever had, we have had. Christians have always had it. We have never had it. It's my favorite line of this. We have never had any trouble about that. The trouble today is satanic agitation striking back at God's established order. That is what is making it so. This is now, it's a lot more explicit than stuff that we've heard over the years, but the principle is exactly the same. It hasn't changed at all in 60 years. It's well, listen, if you guys would just stop complaining, things would be all right. I don't see what the big deal is. I love everyone equally. I just don't think we should be all mixed up together. Like these demographic problems are really going to cause us some issues. So he goes out of his way to no one asked for this sermon. Like he just did this. Like it was toward the end of his life. I think he died in 1968, and he released this. And there's more quotes. You can look it up. I think he did the sermon in 1964, and right around the time the Civil Rights Act was being pushed through Congress. And it's the same stuff that I always heard. It's like, well, listen, like we mentioned earlier, it's the niceness thing. Like I'm nice to people of other races. I don't have any personal antagonism with someone just because the color of their skin. I just don't think that the races should mix. I think that's incorrect, and it's literally against the word of God. So for a place like Bob Jones to pretend that this was just some sort of accident of causality, instead of like the foundational force of this university, and I also like how he said that he thinks all races are equal, but he would hate to see a black president. Like I saw, apparently you don't think that. I found that pretty funny too. But I'll start. Well, Karla, you're our guest. We'll go with you first. Like, what are your thoughts on seeing this shocking and surprising statements from old BJ Senior?
I don't even know. I don't even know what to say.
I don't even know.
But like, it's like what's the word? It's like a snowball effect. So him saying that trickled down onto, the future years. And I think people just kind of ran with it. Like, I mean, when my brother went to school, it was 2008 and he was a freshman. He had a white girlfriend. And the thing is that we didn't know anything about like there not being interracial dating or like how strict it was with that. They kind of just hid that, like swept it under the rug, and they're like, well, if it happens, then we'll like do something about it. But I just remember my mom got a phone call and she was freaking out, and I'm like, what is wrong? Why are you stressed out? She's like, your brother's yelling, he's mad, he's like crying, I've never seen him this upset before. I'm like, what happened? And she's like, he just had to call me and get permission, like in order to date his white girlfriend. So now I have to call the school and I have to tell the dean of men that he's allowed to date this white girl. And I was like, what the? Like, I had never really experienced anything like that, any kind of like racism like that, because I grew up in California in a melting pot. So coming from that to going to Bob Jones, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, what? So I don't know, just like, it's wild how ridiculous words that this man said, and no one even asked him to. He just said it to say it. Like, it's wild that one man can say such harmful words, and somehow people just ran with that. And they're like, yep, that's the way things should be. Like, what? That he really has that much power to affect generations of people like that? That's insane.
And the way that Bob Jones University and the people and some of the people graduates and people that have come through it, and like we talked about in our private thing, like they're in politics. Like this is, they're there. They're in Washington. Like they are there.
Like they plant them in Washington. It's crazy.
Bob Jones has a lot of money, a lot of influence, a lot of power. And it is up in the Republican Party, period.
Which is why they want to keep all these old-fashioned rules so that they can keep the money rolling in.
Yeah. And I have a question for you, Karla, because I remember being very sad that I was not the white girl that your brother picked, because I was a and I do remember also, I don't remember, they were the only interracial couple I ever remember seeing at Bob Jones. Do you remember at least like kind of my time era with you? Was there like more? Was there more other interracial couples at that time?
Dang. I think there were. I think there were, but it wasn't necessarily a white and a black person. It was, I would see like an Asian and a white person, or like Hispanic couples or whatever, but with my experience, and it's so annoying, it angers me to this day, but people were kind of scared because of that rule. I remember dating this white guy. You'll know who he is, but I remember dating him, and he took me to breakfast at like 6 a.m. And he had a conversation with me because he was so scared about the rules and what his parents would think, what the school would think. And he's like, I don't think I see myself with you. Like I see him, and I'm like, okay, I understand. He's like, no, I see myself with a white girl. And I was like, what? He's like, I see my future with a white girl. My parents see my future with a white girl. So we can't do this anymore. Like, you're really cool. I really like you, but I'm sorry. Like, this has to stop now. And I'm like,
I hope all white women were repulsed by him forever. Because and how did
awesome.
you even respond to that? That's terrible.
They weren't, Karla.
I didn't know
they
how to
weren't.
respond to it.
They
Yeah.
weren't.
I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I know you didn't wake me up to come to breakfast at 6 a.m. to eat this bum ass cereal.
Bum ass
To hear you say
Did you
that
take him
you
straight
hate
to the
me
place
because
right
I'm
by the
black.
laundromat? That was super generous.
Yes.
Are you serious?
I was like, what the?
Oh, Karla, fuck that guy. I'm sorry. That's terrible.
His last name is Seabrus, by the way.
Damn, dropping bombs. Holy shit. A shot across the bow. Awesome.
He got rid of social media, so you won't see it.
That's the best
Oh, good.
thing. We've said a lot of good things on this podcast, but I just want you to.
That was great. That was great.
Thank you.
Kai, what were your thoughts from this message from the great Bob Jones?
I mean, appalled. Like, you're not surprised, right? But then you see it in writing and you're like, here's what I don't understand. Like, I will say, I grew up in the IFB my entire life. I was never once, maybe because it was like the military is so diverse, but like, I distinctly remember from a young age, like my parents never made any distinction about like treating people differently or any kind of like disparity or anything towards anyone. Like, I distinctly remember just my dad treating everyone with kindness, like regardless of who. And like, I mean, his best friends in the military in his early years were like, I don't think he had any friends that were white, but so like I think I'm pretty fortunate. I grew up in a home where like you weren't ever taught to treat people differently. Like those conversations like would not have ever had a place in my household growing up, which I'm thankful for. But
your dad that used to tell us the only color that mattered was green. Like I remember your dad saying that to me and you, and I think Sarah once. Do you remember him saying that? But like we only see
I don't
green.
remember a lot of my childhood, but I believe you.
Well, that came from your stepdad or my stepdad, but I was just something I remember one of them saying like one of us asked a question about something surely that we were exposed to at school, and his answer to our question about racism was that we didn't need to worry about it because the only color we needed to worry about was green because we were, I don't know, it might not have been your dad actually. Now that I say it like that,
I don't know
the way I wanted it to.
No, it's okay. It might have been, but like I think, I mean, like, and you can't say like, oh, I don't see color or anything like that. Also wasn't the vibe. My dad was just big on treating people with respect and kindness, and like I don't ever remember hearing anything like remotely racist until like certain churches. But even then, my parents were like, yeah, we don't agree with that, like whatever. But I think where I was going with that was I also really don't understand where they get off like saying that kind of stuff, because like as someone who still is a Christian, like there is nothing in the Bible that says you cannot date people of a different race. There's nothing in the Bible that says segregation should be a thing. So like, and I think that's the problem is like, where do they get this information from? Like, where can you give me a reference? Can you give me what?
I remember sermons like were being referenced the Bible verse that talks about like being equally yoked with your partner. I explicitly remember being preached at that Black and white people just wasn't bad of black people, wasn't bad of white people. We could all be friends and we were all cool, but we just were
Yep.
not equally yoked.
Mhm.
And that was
Yes.
the Bible verse that
Oh,
was said.
maybe you're
So,
right.
I actually never heard that, because the equally yoked I exclusively heard in reference
Was
to
Christian and
Christians and
non-Christian,
non-Christians. Yeah, that's I never heard the equally yoked part, but there's plenty
hadn't
more
either.
that
Yeah.
I can tell you they reference. The one that's referenced a lot, Bob Jones kind of referred to it in his sermon where he talked about how he made the nations of the world. So there's a passage in the book of Acts where the Bible says that God has made mankind of one blood, and he made the many nations and set the boundaries therein. And that's the verse that's used a lot to say that, well, God set these boundaries, and so we really shouldn't break these boundaries apart. And they kind of extrapolated nationality to race, going forward with that. And it's also why they're always so afraid of. He mentioned it too. Whenever you hear about premillennial eschatology, they would always focus on the fear of the one world government. They still do to this day,
Yeah,
and
they do.
and they saw miscegenation and race mixing as just another step towards the one world government, which for some reason why that terrifies them, I don't know. I don't get it. So 200 government's fine,
Is the world government reference at all, like as a thing in Revelations? I don't obviously don't study the Bible now, but like, is that just I'm asking a question now.
The book of Revelation is it's one of the weirdest. Say what?
Does it prophesy?
It's a dicey one.
Though that
you can make it seem that way if you want, just like anything else in scripture, honestly. And so it's like,
I don't remember if it was like this is going to happen first.
Yeah, that the Antichrist would unite the world, and that they want to go against that in every step they can. And the first step is to keep these darkies in line. Like that's the first step we got to do to protect the one thing I write these notes down, but I should write who said it so I can reference it. But is that Bob Jones and like how Bob Jones had this power, and it's true because like Jerry Falwell would be like the direct successor of Bob Jones. I mean, other than Bob Jones Jr., but you know what I'm saying, like politically and culturally, the direct successor of Bob Jones. And Jerry Falwell started 2 segregation universities himself. So it's like he graduated from Bob Jones, and Jerry Falwell, he started his career as a segregationist too back in the 60s. Like he has a couple sermons talking about how segregation is fine. And it's not necessarily that Bob Jones was the authority figure on this. That was just the prevailing culture of the Southern United States. And Bob Jones was a famous and powerful person. And so it didn't follow what he said. He followed what the culture said. He's kind of right in that aspect. And it takes it's kind of like what we talked about before, that how like the fundies, they pretend that they have these staunch moral positions that they hold because of their intrinsic value, when that's not true. They just adapt to the culture like everybody else, but inexplicably they decide we're going to stay a few decades behind because that's the right thing to do. I mean, if they had any integrity at all, they'd be like the Amish, who just pick like 1540 and stay there forever. Like that's at least more logically consistent. You say what, Kayla?
I was just making little jokes. I was being weird. Sorry.
Oh, and Karla, so you mentioned something that I'm glad you brought up, because I was going to talk, trying to find a way to shoehorn this in the conversation. When Kayla asked you how many interracial couples you saw, and you said you thought you saw like maybe a white and Asian couple. This is fascinating too, because Bob Jones did not outlaw Asians from attending Bob Jones. They only outlawed Black people. So it wasn't just a race issue. It was specifically towards Black people. Like that was the problem. And so back in whenever they were forced, but actually they weren't even forced by the they say that they were forced by the IRS in 1971 to accept Black students. They were not forced. The IRS just said, you're not going to get tax breaks anymore. And they're like, okay, fine, if you're going to be a big meanie about it. And then they complain. Then they started accepting Black people because they couldn't get the tax breaks. They could have kept doing it if they wanted to, but before then, the Asian students were allowed to attend, and there were no. I was just listening to an interview with a guy who was a staff member of Bob Jones back in 1975 and or 74. It's like shortly after this happened. And he sat down, people were asking him about the whole race thing because it was shortly after they allowed black people to attend. And he asked, he's like, well, what about, other races? Well, I don't know about all races, but Asian students were definitely allowed to attend. And there were no rules against white people dating Asian people. Those rules didn't exist until black people showed up because they didn't want that. And so to be logically consistent, they're like, okay, well, we got to do all races now. And so this is something that I've noticed a lot of. So Kai, you mentioned that you never saw any racism, or at least with your family, but I don't know about the groups in general, like the churches and everything. And what I found was that you don't see a lot of overt racism. There, like I said, like I mentioned before, like even like fucking slave owners never said they hated black people. Like Robert E. Lee has this long, if you read this letter that he wrote saying that, man, I think slavery is bad. But if you ask me, slavery, it hurts white people more than black people. Because here's the thing. Black people have to work in the fields, but white people are tasked with the burden of civilizing these savages. And that's the really hard work. And so one of these days, I'm sure black people are going to be free from the slavery and they'll be let go. But when that happens is up to God. Until God decides to do that, I'll continue this on. So you'll see these
involved like money and taxes and all that. And then
nothing. Yeah, of course. That nothing to do with it whatsoever. If we have time, I have a very funny Robert E. Lee.
Serious ways. That's real weird.
And this happens to be in my favor. But you won't see a lot of that overt racism, but it's institutional, it's covert, it's systemic, and it's in ways that like it's not. It's like eggs in a cake. Like there are eggs in a cake, but you can't find the eggs in a cake anywhere. Right. It's like it's through the entire thing. And so with Maranatha, if we're dropping names, I'll do one too. So with Maranatha Baptist Church. So the reason that my family left Maranatha was because Pastor Carnahan wouldn't do interracial marriages. Like that's actually why right there. And my dad had a lot of issues with for years. That was like, man, there's something weird going on, Pastor Carnahan, this race thing. He's like, it's just like this stuff is just not adding up. And then would he not do
interracial, or would he not do black and white, or like? Because I just want to clarify, I don't remember at Maranatha us ever hearing any kind of racial. When you were talking earlier, it was only about black and white people specifically.
Yes. So that's a good question, because he had, you guys don't remember Trevor, because I actually remember Sage. So you don't remember Trevor. What you do?
I remember Trevor.
Oh, okay. So you didn't remember Sage though?
Yeah, I remember Trevor and Sage, but I was there before Kyrene was. This was back in my bus days. This was
all right.
Things, but I was
So this first popped up because Trevor was marrying his wife, and his wife was Mexican. And Pastor Carnahan didn't want to do the marriage. Like he didn't want to do it. And because she was Mexican. And I think he eventually capitulated, but it was only after I have to ask Trevor, but it was like they had to go through extra counseling or something like that. That great pastoral counseling and stuff like that. And so one day, my dad confronted Pastor Carnahan about this, and he said, I've been going to this church for 10 years now. You've never had a black deacon? Like that's kind of weird, right? He's like, isn't that kind of odd? And you'd figure that at one point it would happen. And he's like, oh no, I haven't seen it before. And then Dad said, also, you also bring up a lot of whenever there's holidays, you do special, sermons referencing it. It's like been through a lot of Martin Luther King days, and you've never once said anything about Martin Luther King, not one time. And I was there for this one. He brought me and Mark along for this when we went and talked to Pastor Carnahan, and Pastor Carnahan said, well, listen, I don't bring up Martin Luther King because Martin Luther King was an apostate, and so I don't feel comfortable bringing him up in the church. And what he was referencing is the fact that Martin Luther King was a Baptist minister, but he was a liberal Baptist minister. He didn't believe in the deity of Christ. He didn't believe in the virgin birth. Like, he didn't believe in a lot of the core tenets that we believed in as Christians. And so he's like, yeah, and he was politically active for the wrong team. Like, he opposed prayer in school and stuff like that. So he was it's really funny that people pretended they love Martin Luther King. Like, nah, you look back, a lot of people hated this guy back in the time he fucking got shot. But he mentioned that, yeah, so that's why I don't bring up Martin Luther King. And I asked him, I said, well, wait, but hold on. I've heard you bring up Thomas Jefferson before. And Thomas Jefferson didn't believe in any of that shit either. I didn't say shit, but I didn't believe any of that stuff either. Like, Thomas Jefferson wrote, if I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Jefferson Bible, he didn't write it, he edited it. And basically he took the New Testament and the Bible, and he removed all the supernatural elements. And so it was just down to the history and the philosophy and the poetry, and which still has a lot of value. And that was the Jefferson Bible. So, he didn't believe in like God in that way either. And I will never forget his answer. He says, well, it's okay to bring up Thomas Jefferson because he wasn't a minister. So that's fine. Like that's the difference right there. And so, this stuff was there. It was that, like, no one said it out loud because they know it was impolite in proper company. But the shit was there. I saw it all the time. I saw it all the time. But if you're not looking for it, or if it doesn't necessarily, it's not targeted towards you, it's harder to spot. But I saw it over and over again throughout the years. And I always knew the racism. Like, I figured it out pretty early on. Probably like in middle school, honestly. But I always assumed that, okay, so these folks have a lot of racist tendencies, and they say a lot of off-color shit, pardon the pun, and like a really harmful, really harmful views when it comes to people of color. But that doesn't mean that God's not real. That doesn't mean the Bible isn't true. So I kind of just saw it as a bug and not a feature. And then, as time went on, they had the Bob Jones thing and other Christian universities like, oh, this is kind of an IFB thing. Like, this is just like part of the deal here. And then you look deep into it and you find the foundations of this stuff, and you find the Bob Jones and the Jerry Falwells and the Christian universities being started after Brown versus Board of Education. Like, oh, actually, this is like a fundamental building block of this entire system. So yeah, that was it was targeted
and everything. It's not just that, but like it's the purity culture, the homophobia, the racism, and like I don't know, like their like financial stance or however they feel in politics. I really feel like it's all these like super fucked subjects, like the foundation, but everyone's like, but they're Christians and it's good and that's what started America. Bullshit. And it's like, what about me? Yeah, like what? I'm so tired of hearing people like go after like the Catholic Church and stuff that happened in their history, but like nobody, like everybody's so scared to say like there is a shit load of just fuckery in our Christian American history. So I'm not trying to call it any other Christians. I know we're talking. Oh, cute cat. He's back. I know we're just.
I know he jumped up here.
He's so cute.
But like to your point, like, yeah, like you can't just like build your entire core religion on this stuff and then just slowly act like you didn't, and slowly be like, ooh, you do have to like take action and say sorry. And that's why I don't feel bad for us coming at him like this, because somebody has to. Jeez, it's gross.
Karla, what did you experience over the years with this? Although you were out west, it may have been different out there, than being in the Midwest and the South. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, back then, like when I grew up in California, the kind of church I went to, it was like a very militaristic church, and they were more so like my dad was in the Marines, so everyone on base, like we lived near Camp Pendleton, so all the Marines went to that church, and it was super militarized. The pastor used to be in the military, so he was very like he was that type of pastor that like yelled, and I want to say it was almost equivalent to Westboro, where we would like be on corners with signs. I remember I'd be a little kid with a sign, like had no idea what I was yelling about or what I was like, be like, yeah, I was just excited to hold a sign. But little did I know the sign said something about like homosexuality and how it was wrong. Like I had no idea we were screaming at gay people, you know? But like throughout the years in church, it took me a while to just notice the blatant racism. And I didn't really notice it until I moved to a church in Indiana, in Indianapolis. And I could see like when Black people would visit, and it was always just with Black people. Like Asian people were fine, Hispanic people fine, anybody from any other race, they were fine. They were never judged or watched closely. But when we would get like bus kids and Black kids who were just Black, you know, like they would be watched closely. But then there would be other families, like Black families, and they would, I don't want to sound like an asshole, but like they were more like white, I guess. They acted how white people wanted them to act. And they like that, like they were esteemed for that. And then I noticed that at Bob Jones, like if they were a Black person who just acted accordingly, you know, they were looked up to and the teachers admired them. But then you would get the rest of us Black kids or mixed kids all in a group and we're all hanging out. All the faculty were watching us closely to be like, what are they up to?
Yeah.
Like, you know, and then it even stemmed as far as like when it came to us singing. I had friends who could sing so well. They sing so well. But if they sang in any other style besides the operatic style that we grew up in church, they got in trouble or they got spoken to, you know, and be like, you need to chill out with that. That's a little rambunctious. And I'm like, what? Okay.
Yeah.
So
I really thought you were gonna say something else too, but I was in a lot of the choirs and stuff like that, and I didn't participate in the choir by the time I got to Bob Jones, but I remember in many of these settings, girls with incredible voices being in the back, you know, bringing up the harmony, you know, doing the alto rolls, whatever, while like mid-ass fucking preacher's daughter up front was like falsetto snorting out like whatever hymn she was singing and being like, the fuck is this? Can we get somebody else? Can we let somebody else sing? Like, this is the worst. But yeah, just because if you had any kind of, I can't remember how they explained it too, or how we would get corrected, because how they would tell us that it was like too,
it was too secular.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. I mean, it was, you know, whatever. But I had another question and I forgot. I should have wrote it down. Never mind. CJ, take it away. Never mind. I might have one more good about it before we're done.
I will say I had a friend who sang a solo at my old church in California. She sang in like a Whitney Houston style. She was also being trained and raised up to be the next Whitney Houston. She has the most incredible voice and hasn't really done too much with it ever since that incident because she was so traumatized, but she was singing a solo. The pastor interrupted her midway through her solo, took the mic out of her hands, and then proceeded to embarrass her in front of the church and said, "You will not sing in that worldly, like satanic style in this church." And then she got up. She's like, "Okay, then I don't want to be a part of this." And then she got up and left, and like 6 other families followed her out of the church.
Yikes. Oh, yeah, it's awful. That's out of here.
An interesting thing to think about when I've been all obsessed with Cowboy Carter. Love it. But I watched this documentary on Disney the other day, and I love music. I'm like all up in, you know, I don't give a shit what an artist look like. He could be SpongeBob. If it hits, it hits. But I watched this documentary on Disney, and it was talking about all these other African American artists who have been like trying to get into country music for a long time. And I'm sorry, but I'm not trying to affiliate country music with Christianity or anything else, but like, I'm just saying we all, I don't know. It seems you know, people kind of group it together, or they tend to be together like that. I don't know. Country music, Christianity, it seems it did when I was a kid anyway. And There's all this other stuff going on, and you have to like beat it into what is it? Why are you sighing at me?
Oh, I have so much to say about that, but we don't have time. I have so much to say about that.
I know. Okay, you're right. I better stop. But like, same thing. Sorry, that was my whole point.
The only thing I'll just like, if I'll try to like succinctly as possible, because we're at an hour and a half, which we were aiming for, but is that country music wasn't always that way. It wasn't always like that. It was
right.
like
more country music is really African American.
Yeah, like before, it's weird. It's honestly very weird that country music is white coded. I mean, I know why, like historically, why it happened. The same way that a lot of rock music became white, because those did originate from the Black community. But people were gonna buy.
For me, it sound like I was saying like that was what I thought. Like that was just like
no.
What
No, I was getting there.
You're so right. Like white people.
No, I was getting there. To why like it was like. So it was white coded still back in like the 80s and 90s, but it wasn't necessarily Christian coded. Like it wasn't. It was just but that started to happen after 9/11. Like once 9/11 hit, and you had like the Christian crusades against the evil Muslim infidel, and the Dixie chicks, yeah,
like
yeah, exactly. Like once that happened. It became, country music. There was a shift. Like you didn't have country music about how, I'm sitting at a bar on the inside, waiting for my ride on the outside. Like that's like no more. Now it was like, I'll put a boot in your ass type of shit. And it became like this, this symbol of American Christian patriotism. That's what, right time you were a kid. So like, that's when it happened. But because when I was a kid, when I was a younger kid, like the church would shit on country music all the time. They did it all the time. They would always talk about how, this is secular. It's like, propagating degenerate values and everything. So button that up. I just want to bring up like why that it ended up that way. But I also just wanted to, I said it before, and I'm glad that Karla backed me up on this. I already knew I was right, but it was good to have backup on this. But is that how like the racism is really bad in this group. It is towards all race, but it is specifically bad against Black people. Like it's the number one target and the group that gets the most ire and fear and suspicion. And it's like and it's so true when you talk about if you were one of the good ones, they're like, oh, look at you. You're amazing. Like the rest of your people aren't too much to, brag about. But you on the other hand, like you're a credit to your race. That shit happened quite often. So
yeah, it was like a get out situation, 100%.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Oh my God. Yeah. All right. Anyone want to add any additional stuff on this before we wrap it? I thought this was a great time, but anyone any additional notes you want to wrap any of these topics here? We'll start with Kay. I keep reading Kay. Kayla, what do you want to say?
Actually, I put Kay because like I really not everyone calls me Kayla anymore. I mean, I feel like most people call me Kay. You can call me Kay. It's okay.
Oh, cool.
It's okay to call me Kay. But I have nothing to add. I've talked way too much. I just wanted to say that this was so fun, and I really appreciate all. You guys are all my friends, but like you're from different parts of my life. So I appreciate you guys like doing this with me. It was just so fun. And I might have one other question. Please come back to me at the end. I'm sorry.
I mean, you want to do it now?
No, I can't remember it. So I mean,
okay. All right. Kai, while Kayla's rattling her brain around.
Not rattling her brain around.
No, like I can hear it though.
That's okay. We love you for who you are. I don't think so. I'm so glad Karla came to talk to us today because I think her perspective of being there and what she saw her brother and stuff go through is super important.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's so much more to unpack about Bob Jones that I feel like we should do a part 2.
I agree. 100%.
I would love that.
Oh my God, is Karla getting invited back for another pod?
I vote yes. Because we didn't get near
the like homophobic part of it.
Yes, we didn't get into that much at all.
I was waiting for that. I'm like, let's go.
I'll give you a little sneak peek. I remember the first time I saw Karla walking down the hallway. We were like, she was at one end of the hallway, I was at the other. We locked eyes, and it was like, gay.
100%. I was like, I'm gonna flirt with her. I'm gonna flirt.
So can't wait to talk about that.
Karla, anything?
No, I don't think I have anything else to add.
Cool.
Oh, sorry, TJ.
No, it's like cool.
And I've totally forgot my question, TJ. So wrap us on up.
I
Karla,
remember for part 2.
No,
how was your
there's-
experience?
I mean, I actually learned like a lot more in depth today about just the history of racism with Bob Jones, and I don't know, it's mind blowing, but this was great. It was awesome. I'm glad to, have met a community that shares the same views and has experienced or witnessed things that I actually like went through. So it's just nice to feel seen and notice that other people saw it as well, So yeah, this was great. And I'm excited for whatever else we talk about in the future if you guys have me back.
Fantastic. 'Cause
Yeah,
I got a lot to say.
I can't.
I
I couldn't support strongly enough a positive vote to bring Karla back to talk about the queer community and Bob Jones and anything like that. I'm not going to have a whole lot to add to this one because I'm not gay, but I have been
I'm
hit
not
on by
either.
gay guys a lot over the years. Now, not quite as much now that I'm older, unfortunately, but I'm kind of able. It's like it did happen all the time when I was younger, and so it still happens on occasion, but and it's very flattering,
was going to
but,
say, take that as a huge compliment.
I did.
You should feel very flattered by that. Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah. I was flattered and also vindicated. It's like, yeah, I knew I fucking got it. I knew it. So both of those I kind of felt. Kayla, did you remember your question that you were searching? Oh, also, Kayla, I didn't mean rattle your brain around as pejorative. I realized how that sounded when Kyra. That's not what I meant. I thought it was small, but
Well,
I just meant like
you
looking
could
around
say
in it.
either way, and it would have been valid because no, God, I mean, it was something that had to do with something at Bob Jones and some of the curriculum, a class. I don't know. I'll probably think of it the second we get off, and it was for Karla.
Of course.
I'll go back to it, but yeah, this was awesome though, and I want to say I feel like I was extra chatty tonight. So
That's why we're here. That's why we're here. It's all good.
I know your story, so it was easier for me to like talk too much, but I really I'm so excited that we might have you back because it's gonna be awesome.
Fantastic.
I feel like we need to stop saying we might have her back because we've all said that we want her to come back and she's wants to come back, and we're still like,
pressure on
You
we
Karla,
have
like,
her back.
you
So
have
I'm
to
making
come back.
decision.
Yeah.
I'm not the boss. That she's coming back.
well, I'm just trying to make it her choice. Yeah.
Well,
And she already said she
Of
wanted
course.
to.
Okay,
Lay, don't you know
I'm
this
glad
is
we
the
listen. I'm just glad we created a space that people feel seen and that like their stories are validated. That's what my biggest hope was for this, that people would realize that like other people saw it too. And
Yes.
alone. So I'm
I
saying
agree.
we're having Karla back unless she disagrees, which I don't think she's going to, but she's allowed to, obviously. Duh.
Well,
Do
Kai,
you wanna come
don't you
back?
know? Don't
do,
well.
See, there we go.
This is
So you want to come back? Let's go.
well. I was gonna say
Must
this is the,
answer right now.
this is the United States of America in 2024. Women don't have a choice anymore. So like you're coming back whether you want to or not, Karla. We're
That's
gonna
true.
send
That's true.
a
We
heavy
will-
set man with a spiked bat to your door. If you don't show
For
up.
sure.
It's gonna-
I have no rights, so yeah, I would love to come back.
I mean,
All right.
speaking of ending it on a rather sad and depressing reminder of things that have happened this week, yeah.
Good stuff. All right. Appreciate you joining us, folks. Bye.
Bye.